Hello and welcome to Act Now. I'm Julianna Forlano. Thanks for joining me on the show today. Coming on, first of all, Imani Oakley. She is a progressive running for the House in New Jersey. We're going to be talking to her about her race, about how important it is to have another progressive in New Jersey. Will New Jersey support an actual progressive? And what she thinks about all the different thingies that are going on, including the war, including the environment and all that stuff. She has something special to say about student loan debt. So we're going to talk with her about that. We're also going to be talking with Gaby Goldstein, co-founder of Sister District, about the state control over elections and how the Republicans are trying to undermine democracy. But in the Supreme Court, we just had a win. Won't it be nice to celebrate a win in the face of all that is happening across the board? And we're going to start our show with our action rundown. Did you know the Royal Bank of Canada is funding the Coastal GasLink pipeline? Why is that important? And why are people from the entertainment industry coming out to protest en masse? All that and more coming up on the show. Today in our action rundown, we're going to be talking about the No More Dirty Banks campaign, an effort to defund climate chaos profiteers. act.tv produced an internationally covered presser, and there's more action to come. Stay tuned. All right, today in our action rundown, we're going to be covering the No More Dirty Banks campaign. This is an effort to defund climate chaos profiteers, like, say, for example, City National Bank. They are actually considered a premier choice for banking in the entertainment industry. They market themselves as the Bank of the Stars, a brilliant marketing campaign, if ever I heard one, to get rich people to put their money in there. And it has attracted many beloved actors, especially the climate conscious ones. They claim to be a leader in climate conscious banking. That's what they call it, climate conscious banking. Yet, despite that claim, the Royal Bank of Canada, who acquired City National Bank in 2015, has invested over $160 billion in tar sands, in fossil fuel extraction, and the transport of these dirty energies, which is a dangerous business. While we were all watching the Hulk, no one was watching the bank, as it became one of the world's largest and most aggressive financiers of climate destruction. The bank, RBC, also claims to respect the inherent right of Indigenous people to self-determination. And that is a quote: respect the inherent right of Indigenous peoples to self-determination. Of course, that is pretty hard to do and be the lead financier of Coastal GasLink, a fracked gas pipeline being built through the pristine territory and waters of the Indigenous people's land. It's the Wet'suwet'en, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, people's land. And of course, that is without the consent of their hereditary chiefs. By the way, while protesting the destruction of their lands, these chiefs and these protesters have suffered extreme police harassment, raids, arson on where they are living, and armed violence. I think we need just a moment for these people who, in addition to saving and protecting their own sacred land, are actually saving the entire planet from our own foolish greed by not allowing these fossil fuels to be processed, transported, and used in the way that they would like. The banks would love to do it, and the fossil fuel industries would love to do it. The group Indigenous Climate Action and members of the Canadian First Nations, as well as more than 65 Hollywood celebrities, launched the No More Dirty Banks campaign to demand City National's parent company, the Royal Bank of Canada, which we mentioned, to withdraw support for the Coastal Gas Pipeline. Much to discuss there, much to unpack. That pipeline is in violation of the rights and sovereignty of the Gitminton people. And I Hope I got that right in terms of pronunciation. The celebrities have, as you can see here, signed an open letter to the Bank of the Stars. Artists including Mark Ruffalo, Julianne Moore, Naomi Watts, Marissa Tomei. Their clock is ticking like this. Ben Stiller, Edward Norton, Michelle Pfeiffer, tons. Everybody you know, a lot. Scarlett Johansson, Jewel. So many people have signed this letter. We're going to talk about why it's important that celebrities are involved. First of all, here's an intro video from the action organizers laying out what the detailed issues are. Take a look.
Right now, major banks like the Royal Bank of Canada are financing a fracked gas pipeline bulldozing through the land of the Wet'suwet'en Nation in northern British Columbia, Canada. The Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs never consented to this pipeline construction through their territories, which would risk the sacred headwaters of the Wazinqua River. But here's where it gets complicated. The Supreme Court of Canada recognized Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs as rightful title holders of the land. But corporations still get away with consulting only elected leadership put in place by the colonial government and not the rightful title holders. And what makes this even more urgent is a recent militarized police violence by the Canadian Police, the RCMP. For the last 3 years, and as recently as last November, the RCMP violently arrested and detained non-violent Indigenous land defenders and journalists.
You're trespassing on Wet'suwet'en land.
Publicly, RBC makes grand commitments to respect Indigenous rights, ethical investing, and climate action promises. But not only is RBC funding this pipeline to the tune of $315 million, it is the linchpin to a $6.5 billion loan backed by 26 other banks. Even though RBC has made commitments to Indigenous human rights, they continue to fund Coastal GasLink's violence against the Wet'suwet'en people.
This is our land, our sacred headwaters, Wazinqua, which is the lifeblood of our entire nation. CGL is racing to complete drilling to microtunnel under the Wazinqua without the consent of the hereditary chiefs. RBC's financial ties to this project make them responsible for endangering our drinking water, our salmon, and criminalizing us as Wet'suwet'en people on our own land. RBC's AGM is coming up on April 7th. They'll be announcing their sustainable business practices and the immense profits to their shareholders and to the public. Help us hold them accountable for funding genocide.
You can go to nomoredirtybanks.com to sign on to the letter as well. I think it's interesting. It seems very rapey to me that they're just going to jump in there, push aside the rightful owners, and drill into the land and poison everyone, because that's what happens. The next video we have from that same action is the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chief Namox speaking about what is at stake, the dehumanization of the industry, like capitalism and the financial institutions financing it, and how we need to act and what we need to do. Here he is.
Are not here to make a dollar. What we are here to do is to protect what is happening on this planet, climate change. The water that flows from our lands, they go to the north coast of British Columbia as well as to the south coast. And what we do in British Columbia affects Canada, affects North America, affects the entire planet. I simply do not rely on elected officials. I have no faith in what they go for, because it's industry that steers them. And the money that goes into it from these financial institutions, they don't even report to the people that deal with them, the humans that deal with them. So what has to be looked at is the very fact that people need to make that difference. Money talks, right? And in that their capacity, it is a human that controls it. It is a human that can make the difference. We have to change their pattern when it comes to governments and industry and financial institutions. You know, that same old mold that they want us to fit into, it's failed. It's an absolute failure. You know, science has proved exactly what we can say on our lands of why we've been here for century upon century upon century, and why we've governed ourselves as the land is us and we are the land. Because you take the very base of what you have to survive on and you look after it. Money is not the answer. Actually, right now, everything is being steered by it. The humanity of it is gone. You know, when we have the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People, it's not being implemented properly. It's not being taken seriously. When we have the United Nations talk to Canada on what is happening to the Wet'suwet'en and other Indigenous people, it's not being taken seriously. See, that their pattern has to change, and only we can do it. All of us together can make huge changes. But that very pattern, that mold they have out there, break that mold. You know, at one time they told us that we had to stay within this here criteria because it was the only vehicle available. Well, I'll tell you, the wheels fell off, the motor blew up, and the wrong people were steering that vehicle. It is our turn. It always has been. But now it's time to stand up. Speak up. Be human. Messiah.
So brave, these people putting themselves on the line to stop this. Slato is a checkpoint spokesperson. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Something's talking in the background. Hold on a second. There you go. Slato is, a checkpoint spokesperson who speaks on Indigenous peoples, the fight against the pipeline on their land. Here's the next video.
The world is burning around us. We're in the middle of a war because of fossil fuels. The signs couldn't be more urgent than they are right now.
My bad. This is the Mark Ruffalo video. Let's start. Can you start it over? Sorry about that. I thought we had the Slato video up next. My bad.
The world is burning around us. We're in the middle of a war because of fossil fuels. The signs couldn't be more urgent than they are right now. And we have 2 senators in the United States right now that are heavily funded by the fossil fuel industry on the Democratic side who believe in climate change, stymieing any kind of action today. Why celebrities? Because no one else is doing it. And because we have a voice, and our voice reaches the people. And for some reason, we're trusted. Okay? We have this privilege. And we have to use it for the right thing. None of this matters. If our children can't drink the water, they can't breathe the air, they can't go outside, the world burns around them. None of this means anything anymore. And we're all becoming a nerd to it. We're becoming desensitized to this insanity that we're living in. And governments have got to take action. But we see from COP that they've stopped. They're not taking action. Our politicians aren't doing what needs to be done. I used to say for years, we have to fund the fighters. We have to fund the fighters, the people on the front line, so that we can hear from them. And once we hear their stories and the horrors that they're living through, well, our hearts will open and our rationale and our minds will be activated, and we'll start making the changes that need to be made in order to solve this problem. And nothing has happened. And so now I say we have to fight the funders. We have to fight you. You people, RBC, and in relation, CNB, we have to go to you because it starts with you. I want to be with my kids today. I want to be with my family today. I want to go make moves. This is not how I plan to spend my life, but we can't count on anybody else anymore. It's up to us. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. And that's why we're doing this action. And that's why celebrities are taking part, because it's our money that's being used to do this shit. Sorry. It's obscene. We're living in a totally insane, upside down world, and we have to do something. And so we're doing it. And so that's why now. And that's why celebrities.
I think that answers a good question about the why celebrities. And I also think, obviously, unfortunately, that celebrities actually hit the Twitter feed. And, you guys are watching this show. We follow politics. We follow activism. We follow what's actually going on. It's hard to get information out there these days. But most Americans are busy following whether Pete Davidson is getting on a rocket to space. They're not necessarily following this stuff. So celebrities do play a crucial role, whether you wish they would or wouldn't. Here's the question. is their money being used to fund this? So are they going to pull that money out if the bank doesn't change? We'll talk about that at the end of the segment. But first, I've got Slato, a Checkpoint spokesperson that I spoke of a moment ago, speaking on the Indigenous people's fight against the pipeline on their lands.
This pipeline will not go through. This project, the investors in this project will never see the fruition of this project happen. They will never see the benefits from this project, and we will continue to live on our lands as Wet'suwet'en people, upholding Wet'suwet'en law forever. In the face of militarized raids, in the face of guns, in the face of violence, we will stand up and fight for what is rightfully our responsibility to ensure that is there for our future generations. Outsa.
Beautiful. Also, I have another piece of this press conference. Melina Lubacan Massimo, the co-founder and senior director at Indigenous Climate Action, spoke about what this fight is really all about.
Royal Bank of Canada owns City National Bank, which is also known as the Hollywood Bank of the Stars. As a part of our No More Dirty Banks campaign launch, we have released a letter signed by over 65 Hollywood celebrities. This letter is demanding that City National's bank parent company, Royal Bank of Canada, withdraw financial support from Coastal GasLink pipeline effective immediately. We are here to support Wet'suwet'en Indigenous land defenders fighting the construction of a 416-mile Coastal GasLink pipeline slated to cut under the sacred Wet'suwet'en River without the consent of the hereditary chiefs.
What else needs to be said? I mean, this is an action that we are going to cover over and over, and we're going to keep looking at here on our program. Go to nomoredirtybanks.com and sign the petition to make sure that people know that lots of people are paying attention, because everybody again knows that people are paying attention to Pete Davidson and not necessarily paying attention to this. And I know there's a lot of things keeping our minds busy, like a war in Ukraine and all the things that are attendant with that, but that usually gives fossil fuel companies and other ne'er-do-wells the opportunity to ne'er-do-well without anyone paying attention, because everyone is talking about Putin. So again, go to nomoredirtybanks.com and sign that petition. I mean, the bank put itself out there as climate conscious, which is interesting because even that verbiage doesn't make any promises. You know, climate conscious. Well, to me, it sounds like that's dithering and hedging and incrementalism. Like, oh, we're conscious about what happened and we're going to be careful. But what we need, you know, everyone's conscious about the climate right now. What we need is climate radical banks, not climate conscious banks, you know, and kudos to the prominent people for doing something to raise awareness here. Also, it's important, I guess, for their own personal brands to make sure that we know that they themselves are green. Because, like, as everyday people find out that Mark Ruffalo has his bank or money in a bank that's building pipelines, well, the Green Ruffalo brand would certainly be tarnished, and we don't want to do that. But I do believe that his heart is in the right place. And if you pull your money out of a bank that's conscious, where are you going to put it? Or again, that brings me back to this idea of climate radical banks. Do we have any? You can put them in the chat if you know anything about them. But for now, we have to press the banks that we have to go, I don't know, maybe full solar, shall we? And also, this particular action, the stars are demanding that the bank become more than just climate conscious. Their letter they signed asked them specifically to withdraw their support from the Coastal GasLink pipeline effective immediately. But are they going to ask them to withdraw from other projects? You know, RBC isn't just in the one pipeline and then it's full on solar. You know, that's just not happening. We thank the Indigenous Climate Action Group for doing this work, and we will be following your progress there. Coming up in a few minutes, I have Imani Oakley, who's going to be joining me. She is running for the House of Representatives in New Jersey. So stay with me, New Jersey's 10. That's going to be our interview coming up next. You're watching actTV. Guess who is joining me? Imani Oakley, running for New Jersey's 10th district. She has a lot to say about basically everything that are progressive values. Would New Jersey want someone who has this kind of progressive values? I think they are wanting her. I'm happy to have her on the program. Stay tuned. We're going to talk to her in just a sec. And now joining me, Imani Oakley. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how's everything?
It's good. It's good. Thank you for coming on the program today. Given everything that's going on in the world, having a roof over your head means you're doing well, right?
Yes, very much so. There's a lot going on, and we're going to get into it. But yeah,
We're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. First of all, you and I have spoken before. You were on the Seize the House stream that I co-hosted with Marianne Williamson, Katie Halper, Brianna Joy Taylor, and Crystal Ball the other day. It was a wonderful event, and I'm glad you could be part of it. Let's tell, for people who didn't see that, let's give them some background. You are running for New Jersey's 10th district as a straight up progressive. You were the legislative director for the New Jersey Working Families Alliance, where you fought against the establishment's suffocating corruption and unrelenting grasp of the state's grossly immoral party boss system. Can you talk about how that party boss system is corrupting democracy and how that translates to a national office?
absolutely. So New Jersey has the most corrupt ballot design in the nation. We are literally the only state whose ballot looks like this. And essentially what the design is there is one long column of names that the party bosses choose. So party bosses in New Jersey are akin to like the establishment, corporate Dems who kind of make the decisions for the party. And they choose people to go in this long column of names. While challengers, in particular progressive challengers, and I'll talk about some prominent names that have been, pretty much screwed over by the system, are placed in random places on the ballot. So a perfect example of this was the 2020 presidential elections. The party chose Biden to be at the top of their long column, followed by Cory Booker, and followed by the establishment picked congressional members on down the ballot. Now, Bernie Sanders, who, again, whether you like Bernie or not, I've been a Bernie supporter since 2016, but whether you liked him or not, it would be hard for you to make the argument that he was not a legitimate candidate that should be treated fairly in a democracy. He was placed in random places on the ballot with a bunch of white space around him, no other names around him, sometimes far off to the right, sometimes far down to the bottom, because that's another problem. Some of our ballots go vertical and some go horizontal. And basically what this creates is voter deception and voter confusion. The voter deception comes in because in years where somebody with name recognition that isn't as high as Bernie Sanders, in those years, they basically look for the most popular name, which is typically, either the governor or, Cory Booker or, if it's a presidential year, Joe Biden. And voters go straight to those names because they're the most familiar. And then they see a line of Democrats under them. So voters start to think, okay, well, these are where the serious Democrats are. This is where all the Democrats that I should be focusing on are. And I'm a Democrat. I'm going to vote down this line. Not realizing that there are Democrats in other places on the ballot, ones that will actually be better at serving you and your community than those who are chosen by party bosses because they've donated a lot of money or because they were good yes people for the party. They passed regulations that they wanted. And the second thing it does is create voter confusion. Because Bernie Sanders has such a high name recognition, and we suspect that this will actually happen in our campaign, some people wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders, but they wanted to vote for their local people down ballot who were on the line. And I actually got a lot of calls from particularly older voters who were saying, yeah, I want to vote for Bernie, but I also want to vote for like my local council person who's on this line. Am I allowed to do both? And I had to explain to them the ballot line system. It is an extremely corrupt system and a way of drawing the ballot that, again, exists in no other state. In other states, they just have the title of the office and every single person running for that office in a box under it. whether
Right.
they're endorsed by the party or not. In New Jersey, we have this ballot line system, and it really causes extreme voter confusion and voter deception. And we're running against it. We're fighting back.
Oh, that is wonderful. Do you think that people are starting to become aware that this is an issue? I'm sure they're already confused.
Oh yeah, are very confused. But my campaign has made this a part of our messaging since day one. We have talked about it in emails. We have talked about it on the phones with voters. We have talked about it on doors, and we are going to continue to push voter education around the ballot line until June 7th and through June 7th, until frankly they get rid of it. But with regards to this campaign, we are pushing it through till June 7th, because right now we are enjoying a lot of support, and we don't want that to be ruined by people just being confused as to how to vote. I mean, we're talking about preserving voting rights all across the country. We're talking about preserving democracy all across the country. And here you have establishment Democrats here in New Jersey really doing a corrupt thing that disrupts all of that. And it's always so interesting to me. In New Jersey and in the North generally, we're always pointing fingers at down south and all the ballot box games that are being played down south. But here in New Jersey, we are playing our own games. We are the only state in the nation to have such a corrupt ballot system. There's actually a lawsuit going on right now. There are actually two lawsuits going on right now, suing on the basis that is unconstitutional. So, we are going to be getting the voter education out on this. We have been since day one, and we're going to keep pushing it until June 7th.
Oh, great. I am so glad to hear that. I mean, this definitely ties right in to the national voter suppression tactics that we're seeing all over the place. Yeah, you're right. The media covers that, or at least the progressive media covers that, as if it were a Republican issue, that the Republicans are trying to undo democracy. But you don't really hear a lot of, and also the Democrats are keeping a stronghold on having only centrist and corporate candidates be front and center. You hear that when Bernie was running, around the Bernie campaign, around what happened and what was done to his campaign and what was done to him and other candidates who are independent. But it's just interesting that you hear voter suppression and it goes hand in hand with Republicans, and you're telling me that's not the case.
Yeah, not in New Jersey, not at all in New Jersey. In fact, some of the most ferocious fighters for keeping this corrupt ballot design have actually been establishment Democrats.
Of course.
And it's ludicrous.
They want it. It protects them, right?
And frankly, it allows them to put on people and get people elected into office who will be yes men for them, yes men and yes women. So, because basically if they were to fix the ballot to be regular, everybody would be on the same playing field. So they would actually have to run real campaigns against real people who are really helping their community, people who have really been out there and doing the good work without having an advantage. And that would mean that they would have to put people up who are independent thinkers, who know their policy stuff, who are also active in the community. And those folks are a lot harder to control than the person who just gave a lot of money to the party so they could have a seat, or the person who was a yes person while they sit on a commission or what have you, just so they could get a seat. It's a lot harder to control independent thinkers and people who are independent of that machine mindset. So they don't want to get rid of it, because then they're going to actually have to run real campaigns and run people possibly that will actually work for communities and not work for the special party interests.
People were recently shocked that New Jersey went reddish, more red than they had anticipated. So I feel like I'm hearing two things here. The last election, New Jersey shocked people by being a little more red than they thought. And now you're saying that the party bosses are holding on, in the Democratic Party, are holding on to the center, not letting the progressives have their equal time on the ballot, not supporting progressives. Do you think progressives would win if that was unraveled in some way, or do you think it would go more red?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think progressives would sweep, because I think the real problem that New Jersey Democrats have is such a lackluster amount of talent that's currently sitting in office.
Yeah, because they're actually just Republicans. They're Republicans light with the occasional, they'll give you a check. You know what I mean? They're corporate Republicans.
Exactly. They're access and opportunity Democrats, which means we will, if you're rich enough and you're connected enough, you can get something good. But if not, oh well. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why Republicans are winning because, backwards values, of course, Republicans have very backwards values, but they are putting up their quote unquote best talent. And voters recognize that. And I would love for the Democrats in New Jersey to realize that their best talent are also progressives here in New Jersey. And that's who they should be putting up. That's who they should be putting in front of voters, front and center, who will actually work for everyday communities here.
So one of your big issues that you're running on is higher education costs, particularly because as you've said, they're a major contributing factor to the racial wealth gap. And as a working class law school grad, you have some personal experience with the situation. Talk about the situation as you see it, the injustice as you see it, and how you would, what kind of programs you would support in order to adjudicate it.
Absolutely. So I have 3 degrees, and I'm also a barred attorney here in New Jersey. And I am up to my eyeballs in student loan debt, up to my eyeballs. And a lot of the centrist talking points are, well, you should have had more financial literacy and maybe things would have been better. But there is literally no other alternative. I can't become a lawyer without going to school. There's literally no other alternative. So,
they wanted you to read how expensive it would be and then stop. So that you didn't eventually run for office. Hello.
Exactly. So, there's no other alternative. If financial literacy has zero to do with it, it has everything to do with our system. Now, a short history lesson. Back in the day, and when I mean back then, I mean not that long ago, I mean like the 80s and the 70s, school in this country was very, very cheap. I actually have a mentor of mine who went to the same university undergrad that I did, who also went to dental school and orthodontist school. Okay, so he's a doctor, he's a full dentist. And it was $1K per semester for him to go to undergrad. Wow. $1K per semester. When I went to undergrad, it was more expensive, much more expensive. It was $35K per semester. Now it's the average is around $70K per semester. And
that's insane. Who's going to college? I mean, where are these colleges even getting students? Is everyone so rich? Is it all loans? I mean, who can afford this?
Yeah, basically only the children of rich folks. Only the children of rich folks. And this is something that the Reagan era ushered in. That's what I feel like people don't realize. People think that, it's just because, these students are lazy, that they can't pay off their loans, or they just made bad decisions as to what majors to take. No, the reason why so many people in this country previous to the late 80s and the 90s were able to go to school, go for really, really cheap and make full-on careers where they could buy a house with their first job was because we had a much cheaper education system that Ronald Reagan ruined after he ushered it in. And now you're seeing mostly Black women affected by this, mostly people of color affected by this, and also mostly women in general affected by this because we are, for the most part, the ones that are going to school the most. And it just makes no sense in a country as wealthy as ours, in a country with a financial system set up the way ours is, for us to be punishing people for seeking an education. It used to be in this country that we saw seeking an education as like a competitive thing. During the 1950s, it was actually considered like a Cold War type of thing to make sure, we have to keep up with the Soviet Union. So we got to make sure everybody's going to school. And I'm not saying we should go back to that. But what I am saying is it does keep our country competitive, right? Mm-hmm. It does good things for the country, for communities, as well as individuals. And there's no reason why college should be as expensive as it is. So solutions. What am I going to do about it? Well, number one, I think we should be forgiving all student loans. We need to wipe them out. It is a lag on Black women. It is a lag on young people. It's frankly a lag on parents too, because there are a lot of parents who take out loans. It's not just students having loans in their names. It is a lag on our entire economy. We should be forgiving student loans. Mm-hmm. Number two, we should also be making college free or cheap, similarly situated countries like our own. So Germany, the UK, Scandinavian countries. I actually have a friend in Germany that I was talking to about student loans in America and how costly school is. They go to university for free. Okay, and we have a much more robust economy than they do there. There's no reason why we cannot be sending people to school for free or for cheap. I know in the UK, some schools are around like $1K per semester, but still incredibly cheap. Incredibly cheap. There's no reason why we can't do the same. And so I want to fight to make sure that we get that here in this country as well.
Imani, I had a conversation with an economist who comes on our show often about wiping out student loan debt or even cutting. Bernie Sanders said he would wipe it out completely. Biden promised to wipe out $10,000 of debt. He hasn't done that yet. But this economist made some really interesting comments, and I have a clip of him speaking, and I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the points that he brings up around this issue. Now, I do want to warn everyone that the video kind of stops and is a little bit jumpy, but you can get the gist by just listening to Professor Richard Wolff speak. Here's the video.
If you're going to give an amnesty, you're basically going to say, forget 10,000 or forget 50,000. You're saying something very painful to the people who have done without all kinds of things in their lives because they didn't want to accumulate this kind of debt, who forewent marriage, who forewent children, who never bought a house, things they might have done if they let the debt accumulate, but they didn't. We ask people to have that mentality. We teach our children not to get loaded up with debt. Those who behave that way and are now looking at themselves and saying, I was an idiot. I missed an opportunity. I could have gotten this forgiven. And then I want to remind you, student debt is only one of the 4 levels of debt that plague the American working class. Mortgage debt for your home, car payment debt for your automobile, and credit card debt for your plastic. I mean, yes, the students have a claim, but don't the other people too? I mean, let me be real honest with you as an economist. Since the 1970s, we have grown the consumption of this country. Standards of living have risen, but the wages didn't. For the first time in the history of this country, the rising standard of living which we enjoyed wasn't paid for by a rising standard of wages. You know what paid for it? Credit. MasterCard, Visa, and all the rest. And now let me make clear to you what that means. Most of you that I'm talking to, your job depended on the ability of your employer to sell whatever it is your job helps produce. And the reason your employer could hire you was because your employer could sell to people who didn't have the money, but who got credit. We've all benefited from that credit. So if we're going to relieve some people of the burden, on what justification in the world could you not do that for the others? And I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes. I think the people who run this society would like to give the students a break for not good reasons. They hope for the votes and all the rest. But they don't do it, and they won't do it. And that includes Biden, which is why he won't give more than a small amount of money, which leaves students with still a big fat burden, is because he's afraid of what I just said. He's afraid that if the rest of the people burdened by mortgage, car payments, and credit card see what those students got, you're going to see mass movements demanding parity for them. And who amongst us is going to say that that isn't justified?
Imani, your thoughts about what was said here. You can pick any part that you'd like to respond to.
Bold of him to assume that those aren't the same people, the people that have credit card debt, mortgage debt, and student loan debt. And that once they get student loan debt forgiven, they'll be a lot happier because they can pay for the other things a lot easier. Very bold assumption, very large assumption. Number 2, the argument that, we shouldn't fight to cure cancer because, what about diabetes is extremely elementary. And we should be beyond this. I mean, that's completely silly. When we have identified a way to relieve people in this country from crushing debt or from any crushing economic circumstance or any crushing circumstance at all, and we can do it with the stroke of a pen, we should be doing that. That's the point of government. It's literally the point. It's why it's here. It's not just here to wage war perpetually. It's not just here to have its citizens constantly working to death. It's not the point of a government. The point of a government is so that it takes care of the people in society who have also agreed in return to follow certain rules and regulations.
Yeah, because it seems that the people who are suffering under what Professor Wolf talked about and what we've been talking about, all of this crushing debt, be it student loan debt, mortgage debt, et cetera, is basically, as you gave the history right before we showed the clip, it's basically because predatory lending was allowed and the prices of education were, the changing nature of the attitude toward education and the prices of education were allowed to spike. And it's the same with homes. I mean, no one can afford a home at this point, and why would you buy one at the top of the market anyway? You're just going to lose value anyway. Well, who knows? But that it's interesting for me, wiping out student debt is like a dream. I would love to have my student debt wiped out. I would like to have my debt wiped out before I have to start paying my own child's debt as she starts to potentially enter her higher education years. But it does seem like there are also, if we can't do that, it seems like there are other things that can be done that aren't so shocking to the American consciousness, like stopping the predatory nature of the loans, stopping the ballooning nature of the mortgage loans. There's just a lot of restrictions we could put on these financial institutions that it seems like everyone would agree upon.
Yeah, but again, my focus is really on forgiving them, because I think we take these half measures all the time. We say, well, not a lot of Americans are on board. But they are. Forgiving student loan debt is a very, very popular issue, not just among the left, by the way. Also, because you have people who are more moderate, who are a bit older, who are saying, yeah, I don't even know how I'm going to send my kid to school. I actually knock on doors around here, and people, when we ask them, what's a big thing that is really important to you that you would like Congress to fix? And they're like, the cost of education. It is very, very popular. So listen, we need to fix it. We need to stop leaning into these Republican conservative talking points, saying we can't, or saying people don't agree with it, because the data is there. The mechanisms are there. We just need to commit to doing it. And that's really all it really is going to take.
Well, that would be great. I'm all for it. And what about free public universities, like state-run universities, and also what about free trade schools, or increasing the quality of education so you don't need 20 years of it to become a social worker, a teacher? I know a high school student who has 4 study halls in the course of a day. Yeah, it seems like there are other things we can do besides striking the debt to adjust the injustice of our education system right now.
Well, yeah, so we have to do 2 things in tandem, right? We have to strike the debt as well as fix the cost of education. Because if we just strike the debt and we don't fix the cost of education, we'll be right back here, in a few years. So we definitely have to make colleges free and trade schools free as well. And I think both of those should be included. Something that I hear a lot from centrists is that, well, we're not going to make college free, but you can go to a trade school. But this is America. Unless we are saying that the concept of the American dream is a complete lie and it's a completely false and it doesn't exist, in America, I should be able to go to whatever school I choose, because this is the land of opportunity. I shouldn't have to, because I was born into financial circumstances beyond my control, have to choose certain schools because I'm of a certain wealth class. So unless we are saying that the American dream is a complete myth and the opportunity in America doesn't actually exist, then it looks like we're going to have to make all of the options free or cheap. That's really our options. And so I completely agree with you. We do have to make sure that we are forgiving the debt, but then we have to fix the problem of the cost in the first place. Otherwise, we'll just be repeating this over and over, and that doesn't make any sense. And again, the way our economic system is set up in this country, we can do it. We did it literally for decades before Reaganomics era. And everybody knows how great Reaganomics worked out, right? So
yeah, not great.
So
I have two more quick questions I want to ask you, but they're obviously not quick. So I'm just going to open it up for your comments and so that the people can get to know you.
no worries.
The anniversary of the American Rescue Plan is coming up, and specifically, millions of Americans are about to lose their health care if we don't extend the subsidies in the ARP beyond the end of the year. Your comments about that particular situation in healthcare in general.
Well, number one, we need to be expanding it just so we can make sure that we are keeping people on their health care. No secret, healthcare in this country is exceedingly expensive. I'm an asthmatic and I also require an EpiPen. Those two prescriptions alone cost around $600. And that doesn't make any sense. So in the short term, we need to be extending ARP to make sure that we can keep people on healthcare so that they can need it. But we really need to start fighting for Medicare for all and passing Medicare for all. We need single payer in this country. I mean, if nothing else, COVID should have shown us how really important it is to have single payer. In fact, fun story for you. So I actually got COVID December 2020. And I had health insurance, right? But my doctor's office, the one that I typically go to, didn't have it on file because I had switched insurances. They didn't have it on file. So they had it as if I had no insurance. And I went to my typical doctor to get a COVID test because I was comfortable there. It's close to my house. Like, it's easy. Like, I know the people. Quick appointment. Nothing, out of the whack, whatever. I go and I get, the COVID tests, and they charge me not only for the COVID test, but I was positive for COVID. And then they charged me $95 per televisit because they thought I didn't have insurance. Now, I don't have a choice. If I'm having COVID, a potentially deadly disease, and I'm an asthmatic, so it was really important for me to have, those televisits. They're charging me $95 for something that could potentially save my life. That is incredibly immoral. Incredibly. So we need single payer in this country. We need to be making sure that we are taking care of the health of our citizens. If COVID hasn't shown that, I don't know what will. But again, when I talk to folks, Medicare for all is extremely popular. It is popular because people do not want to keep paying these huge monthly bills. They don't want to keep paying so much for their prescriptions. They don't want to keep paying co-pays if they have, especially if they have to see a lot of specialists. So we need single payer in this country. Short term, extend ARP so we can keep people, situated for the short term. But then long term, we need to be passing Medicare for all.
Imani Oakley running for New Jersey's 10th district. You can go to Oakley for Congress to support. You could phone bank for her. You could send money. You could support. When is the election?
June 7th.
All right. Well, we're going to keep following, keep hoping for the best for you. I would love to see you seated in that big house up there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much. And thanks for the work that you're doing. I know you're running an unbought, no corporate donation campaign. So again, Oakley for Congress. So you want to go support another person who will go to Congress and not be beholden to special interests, except for the interests of the people. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You have a good one.
You too. You too. You're watching actTV. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. actTV. That's what you're watching. I'm Julianna Forlano. Coming up, Gaby Goldstein, the co-founder of Sister District, is joining us to talk about Independent State Legislature Doctrine. What is that? Well, it's the conservative legal theory that argues that the Constitution gives state legislatures the sole authority to set all our election rules. You can see how this might be problematic. Last week, the Supreme Court allowed court-ordered congressional maps to stand in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, which is a short-term legal win for progressives. Meanwhile, that ISLD, the Independent State Legislatures Doctrine, is circling our democracy like a great white shark. Anyway, joining us to talk about the major threat posed by this doctrine is Gaby Goldstein, coming up in just a minute. Gaby, thank you so much for joining me on the program today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
So first, let's just jump right in. Can you talk about the Independent State Legislatures Doctrine? What is it? Who is behind it? And why was it gaining so much traction last year?
Yeah, so I think that when folks hear legal theories and jargon, it can be a little overwhelming, and it can be hard to sort of follow it. This theory is actually really, really, really simple, and we don't have to worry about the fancy names and all the rest. This is a theory that conservative lawyers have hatched up that basically says that the Constitution, the federal Constitution, gives state legislatures the authority to do whatever they want when it comes to elections without judicial review. Period. Full stop. Why would they want this? Well, because Republicans control so many state legislatures. This has been a long-term conservative project to build power in state legislatures. As I always say, progressives are tardy to the party when it comes to paying attention to
Tardy to the party.
Tardy to the party when it comes to paying attention to state legislatures. Very overlooked venue of power for us, not overlooked at all on the right. So they have all this power in state legislatures, and they're looking for ways to use that power. And one way to use that power is by establishing as the law of the land that these legislatures can do whatever they want around elections. Of course, the end game there being the 2024 election, which is really much closer than we might think, where the sorts of fraudits and election review and election subversion that we saw coming out of places like Arizona, Wisconsin, et cetera, where Republicans control the legislatures, essentially carte blanche. Well, if they can say, if the Supreme Court says that the state legislatures can decide election rules, then what it means is that they can decide election outcomes. There you go for the 24 election.
Yeah, and we're sunk because we already saw what the right wing is planning. They're like, oh, we don't care who voted. First, let's close down the polling places. Let's make it illegal to give somebody a piece of pizza or a glass of water. Let's make it a 10-hour wait, and any other number of things that they were doing in these states that are trying to suppress the vote. Let's throw people off the voter rolls. And now, even if by some miracle, even with all of that, if the progressive candidate should win, we can just decide it wasn't fair and throw it out, right? That's what's going on here.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's a grave threat to our democracy, as I think your viewers can clearly see. The whole premise of our democracy is that our votes matter, and that our elections are fair and open. And so, if we have institutions like state legislatures that have been totally overtaken by Republicans unfairly, mind you, through gerrymandering, and we can talk about that as well. These are unearned majorities that Republicans have in state legislatures. And by the way, their policies that they're pushing are very unpopular. Republicans are very, they're desperately afraid of the future of this country. And they're looking for ways to enshrine their power in perpetuity. And a different way to say it is they're looking for ways to rig the rules so that they can stay in power even when their policies are no longer popular.
Talk about what happened in the Supreme Court last week with the congressional maps. Just bring everyone up to speed, and then why is this important?
Yeah, so in both Pennsylvania and North Carolina, the Supreme Courts decided that the congressional maps needed to be redrawn to be fair, as a way to unwind the gerrymandering, the Republican gerrymandering that has been such a key feature of the congressional maps in those states. So the Supreme Courts in those state Supreme Courts said, no, you need to redraw those maps so that they're fairer. So the maps were redrawn and the maps were fairer. The Republican Party in each of those states then turned around and filed emergency order applications to the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to stop these fair maps from going into effect. They wanted the prior unfair gerrymandered maps to go into effect. And part of what they argued to the court was this theory that the state legislatures had passed these maps and the state Supreme Court has no right to order fairer maps. The state legislature gets to decide what the maps are, regardless of whether they're fair or not. And that is the crux of this legal theory that, the name says it all, independent state legislatures. It's the idea that they are independent and they are essentially above judicial review. And I think what it's important to understand is that the Supreme Court declined to throw these maps out now under this emergency order, as a matter of emergency order, but they could very well hear this case in the next term, and they want to. Many of the conservative justices on this court want to hear this case in the full term, and there is reason to believe that they will establish some measure of this radical expansion of state legislative power as the law of the land, certainly before the 2024 election.
This does not make me happy.
Me either.
What can we do about this? I know Sister District is fighting this. What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we can all do is not close our eyes to the importance of states and the growing importance of states. And I think part of what has gotten us to this point as progressives is not just that we don't it is certainly true that historically we have not invested in states and state legislatures pretty much at all. The budget in 2020, with the biggest election of our lifetimes, for the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, which is the part of the Democratic Party that helps to elect folks to state legislatures, was about $50 million. That's a quarter of the total price tag for many losing Senate races in 2020, right? You get 75 million, 100 million for these losing races. So we don't invest enough money, we don't invest enough time, energy, attention into these races over the past 100 years.
Where are we going to get this money? I mean, it seems like all the money is going to the right.
No, I'm talking, these losing races against, the Mitch McConnells of the world, and these races that Democrats pour money into. It's a waste of money to pour our money into races that we are going to lose by 25 points, millions and millions and millions of dollars. If we redirected those funds towards strategic winnable races, it might not make us feel as good, right? It's good to rage donate. It feels good. Take my $20. I hate Mitch McConnell. That's, it's not
rage donate. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, there was an article in the Atlantic about rage donating and the fact that progressives do it. It's not very strategic, right? So, but in any case, what I mean to say is that we're in this position because of a long-term disinvestment on our side in state power. But it goes deeper than that, I think. I think that progressives have an aversion to the idea of state power because it is so associated with conservative values, states' rights, and all of that. When in fact, I think we can expand our imagination and look to the progressive states that we do control the legislatures, California, Massachusetts, etc., and see incredibly progressive visionary policy coming out of those states and develop more of a progressive federalism. This idea that states can be vehicles for good for all of us in terms of policy and all of the rest. So what we can all do is get educated about the importance of state legislatures, get excited about them, think of them as not just things we have to tend to because we want to fight Republicans. We do need to do that, but also because they're important on their own and they can be important bastions of progressive policy. So that's one thing. And then of course, invest our time, our energy and resources into these races and into building state power sustainably and for the long term. It's absolutely necessary for our democracy.
Gaby Goldstein, co-founder of Sister District. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and we're going to continue to follow this issue as we hopefully patch up the rough spots that we've let crumble while we weren't paying attention in our democracy.
Thank you.
You can find Sister District on the internets, and Gaby is Gaby as you see right here, Gaby __ Goldstein on the Twitters. Stay tuned. Coming up next, we're going to talk about defunding Fox News. Hi, everybody. Coming up next is our correction segment, one of my favorite ones. We're talking about defunding Fox News. Stay tuned. That's right. Democracy dies in bullshit. Love that opening. I hope you liked it. Okay, so misinformation is hard to avoid both online, but also everywhere. But it does seem like we should be able to hold news that's on big networks that use whatever to a higher standard of truth than, say, internet pundits and armchair epidemiologists. Anyway, the First Amendment gives us the right to free speech, but it doesn't give us the right to call opinion news. There has to be consequences for knowingly spreading lies and marketing them as news. act.tv has partnered up with a number of associations and a number of groups to try to do two things to get Fox News to not be the propaganda arm of fascism. Okay, so that's really what this is all about here. News organizations are responsible for ensuring that their information is factually correct, but Fox News has unabashedly been propagandizing around climate change. They have outrageous claims about the coronavirus public health measures. Fox News routinely broadcasts false and misleading information. It's obviously just propaganda disguised as news. And now they're spreading so much misinformation about Russia's unwarranted invasion of the Ukraine that Russian state television actually broadcast Fox News clips with Russian subtitles. Because why do more work when Fox is already doing it for them? That's just the beginning, by the way. An independent study by the Kaiser Family Foundation found that Fox News viewers were 3 times more likely to believe COVID-19 misinformation than viewers who get their news from basically anywhere else. Fox News viewers are likely to be less informed than those who don't watch any news, and they show decreased knowledge of science and society. I have a couple of videos to show you, and I'm bringing this up, not that you were watching a lot of Fox or not that you want to watch clips from Fox, but basically Fox is killing their own viewers. I mean, this does not seem good, well, maybe, but they should not be allowed to do that. I have so we're working with some other groups to we have a petition out there to get, first of all, U.S. companies to stop advertising on Fox News. These campaigns have worked in the past because money talks. And when thousands and thousands of people sign a petition that say, hey, Gerber, we don't like your baby food being advertised on Fox News because they killed my baby's grandmother by giving her false vaccine information. They do tend to work. They have worked in the past. And also we have another petition where we are working with cable companies to drop Fox News from their platforms. That's a bigger ask, but we're working with Robert Reich on that. actTV is participating with Daily Kos, Democrats.com, Inequality Media for Civic Action. That's the Robert Reich group. OD Action, Progress America, TakeItBack.org, and a bunch of other great groups who are doing this stuff. But first, I would like to play you a little bit of a clip. Giancarlo, I think we might be going out of, we're going to play video number 3 first. Don't play it just yet. Let me set it up. Here is a video of one of their hosts, one of their blonde hosts. I believe she's blonde. I don't know. They all seem blonde. When I was working in the building, there was a lot of blonde women there. Anyway, here is some misinformation. Here's some misinformation. This is the way they mislead their viewers. Actually, let's first play the Tucker clip, Giancarlo, and then we'll move on to the anti-vax trooper that they put on 1,000 times, and then he died of coronavirus, and they didn't make mention of that. So first, a little bit of Tucker Carlson, if you can stomach it. Watch him lie to the American people and mislead them.
These highly vaccinated and highly boosted countries, rates of infection are incredibly high, and rates of serious disease and death are also rising. The mRNA COVID vaccines need to be withdrawn from the market now. No one should get them. No one should get boosted.
I mean, they're not messing around. They're just like literally not messing around at all. They're just telling you no one should get boosted. Don't do it. I mean, this is why your uncles aren't getting boosted.
One should get double boosted. They are a dangerous and ineffective product at this point against Omicron. We are at a dangerous moment, and these products need to be withdrawn.
When you say they're ineffective, and that's demonstrable to anybody who lives in this country. Everyone.
Oh God, that talking point about how they're ineffective, meaning you could still get it. Yeah, they never said you weren't going to get it, or maybe they said it once, but they realized actually the whole point is that you don't die, even if you do get it. Still not great because you can get long COVID and it's terrible, but better than dead, I would think.
You know who's had it, has had COVID, and most of them are fine.
Yes. If you know anyone who's had COVID and you can still talk to them, then most of them are fine. But the ones who've had, a lot of them are dead. It's sickening what they're doing. And now let's go to the anti-vax trooper clip where they're interviewing this person. Go ahead, Giancarlo, do you have that one?
Speaking of the Pacific Northwest, vaccine mandates in Washington state just kicked in, and already people are being forced out of their jobs. Among those are dozens of Seattle police officers and firefighters. Now, you can see them here climbing the steps of City Hall today to turn in their boots. Also among the unvaxxed and unemployed are 127 Washington State Patrol employees, including my next guest, Troop.
I just have to say I love Fox. They're so on brand all the time. They're like, the cops are being unjustly. The cops protect the poor cops. They're being unjustly accused, unjustly treated.
Per Robert LeMay.
This is my final step. After 22 years of serving the citizens of the state of Washington, being asked to leave because I am dirty. State 1034, this is the last time you'll hear me in a state patrol car. And Jay Inslee can kiss me.
Robert LeMay joins me now. Robert, now it's fine for you to be out there patrolling unvaccinated for the last 19 months. But now yes. I guess you're just not.
Well, we have vaccines now. That's why he should be getting one. They're asking him to get one now because before there wasn't vaccines, but now there is. So
not wanted, not needed, not wanted. How does that feel?
Well, feels pretty bad. The problem is they awoken a sleeping giant. I've had so many contacts. I'm not a social media type guy, so my kids have been helping me out, and they're like, "You're getting 2 million hits here. I've had contacts from Great Britain. I guess I'm in Russian paper. I mean, it's insane. It's going across the state and across the world. It's been unlimited talk shows. I've been on talk shows pretty much solid since 2:00 yesterday, and I could do a ton more if I had the time of day. It's just a mess.
Now, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan defended this vaccine mandate this way.
What we want as a city is we want to have our valued employees, but we need for public health for them to be vaccinated. The people of Seattle, when they dial 911, they want to know the person who's responding to that emergency is fully vaccinated. The people of Seattle need to know that that person is fully vaccinated and least likely to transmit COVID to them or their loved ones.
Robert, your reaction to that?
Well, I happen to be sitting in downtown Seattle right now. I haven't seen a patrol car all day. I'd say the same for us. What about all the homeless people they've allowed on the roadways to walk around and just do crazy things and violence? I don't see them wearing masks or getting vaccinated. It's ridiculous. It's a control thing. I mean, Jansley is a big opponent of this, as everybody knows. Same thing. I mean, we tried religious exemptions. We tried everything legally we could possibly do. They even fired our senior chaplain. His only job is to pray and help people, and they fired him. So it's not just a me thing. It's not just, a chaplain thing. It's a we thing. I mean, I do as a job site today, talking to guys, electricians, union carpenters. I mean, everybody is pissed off. And
I'm not going to get into any more of this because it's making my eyeballs hurt, but and my brain. But I am going to say one thing: the man died, and they didn't give of COVID, and they didn't give him any coverage. They didn't even say, "We're so sorry that you've passed away from COVID." They didn't make mention of that. It's pretty interesting. So I do wish him eternal rest and peace for his family. I know these things can be so hard, and it's just sickening how Fox News is. Anyway, this is why we're working with these groups that I mentioned earlier, why act.tv is working with these groups to try to both get advertisers off of the platform, off of Fox News, and get Fox News off of the different cable networks. You can go, so act.tv is putting up a lot of actions now. We're taking action. It's very important, and I'm so thrilled about it. You can go to act.tv/take action, act.tv/take, and then I think it's a dash action. And all of the things that we're working on, all of the petitions we ask you to sign are there. Signing up will I don't know what it gets you. More show? I don't know. But it does get you involved in what we're doing, and we will keep you updated with everything that's involved with this particular push. The Dish Network dropped Fox, so it's possible that other networks will drop Fox. We can keep hope alive. You're watching act.tv. Thanks for watching. Coming up on next week's show, more actions. We're going to cover more stuff. I might even have an interview with one of the people who was at that Indigenous protest. We're also going to be covering a little more of a Ukraine coverage, and I got all that and a few more surprises. So thanks so much for watching today. We will see you next week.